If you have ever stood in your own kitchen, halfway through an ordinary evening, and thought, quietly, so quietly you would never say it out loud, I think I am wasting my potential. I want to tell you what Carl Jung would have said about that thought. Not what the world says. The world says you had your chance and the window closed. And you have believed it, because you cannot point to the thing. There is no ruin, no dramatic failure. Only the feeling, following you from room to room, that something in you was meant for more and never got there. Jung would have told you that nothing you buried is gone. It is not missing. It is in custody. And the place you have been looking for, it is precisely the wrong place. Before the end of this, I am going to ask you one question. It is not, what did you give up? It may seem a stranger question than that, but it will be far more useful. I will ask it when you are ready. In Emberhollow, on the eastern terraces, there was a woman named Thea, and every orchard on that hill was hers. Not hers to own, hers to make. She was a grafter, the one they called when a tree would not fruit, when someone's grandmother's pear tree was dying and they could not bear it. Thea would arrive with her satchel and her thin blade, and a season later there would be fruit. 25 years of other people's orchards. If you had asked anyone on that hill whether Thea was wasting her life, they would have laughed at you. One market day, an old woman stopped in front of her and said 5 words. It took Thea a year to understand them, and I will tell you what they were. But not yet. Because there was one more tree. On the windowsill above Thea's basin there was a jar, and in the jar there was a cutting, and that cutting had been sitting in water for 25 years. She changed the water. She turned it toward the light. It never yellowed, never dropped a leaf. It also never grew. A cutting in water stays exactly the size it was the day you cut it, forever, until you give it ground. You have a jar. I do not know what is in it. The degree, the shop, the instrument in the cupboard, the thing you were doing at 19 that people said you were remarkable at, and that you have not mentioned to anyone in 2 decades. And here is what I want to say before we go further, because I think you have had it backwards for a long time. You did not waste it. You kept it alive. Those are not the same thing, and it has cost you something enormous to confuse them. Something in you would not let that cutting die. Through the years that had no room in them, through the people who needed you, through every sensible reason to tip the jar out, you kept changing the water anyway. That is not a woman who wasted her potential. That is a woman who protected it under conditions that did not deserve it. Jung wrote something about the buried parts of us that almost nobody quotes, because it is not the frightening half. We are told the shadow is the dark material, the anger, the appetite, the things we are ashamed of, and it is. But in Psychology and Religion, Jung wrote this. But the shadow is merely somewhat inferior, primitive, unadapted, and awkward, not wholly bad. It even contains childish or primitive qualities which would, in a way, vitalize and embellish human existence. But convention forbids. Hear the last 2 words. Convention forbids. Not you forbade it. Not weakness, not laziness, not some flaw in your character. Convention. The rules in the air around you when you were young enough to believe they were gospel. And I am guessing you heard the same ones I did. Be sensible. There's no money in that. Someone has to hold this family together. Not now. Later, when things settle. And things never settle. And the cutting went in the jar. Now, the market. Thea passes a stall belonging to a woman about her own age, with an orchard of her own across the valley, and that woman's fruit is stacked in crates in the sun. And something goes through Thea that she has no name for and is deeply ashamed of. She calls it envy. She goes home disgusted with herself because she is not a jealous woman, and here she is unable to look at another woman's apples. I want to tell you what that feeling actually was, and stay with me, because it is the reason I made this video. Jung wrote in Ion, "Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face." The woman you cannot stop watching is wearing your face. Not her talent, yours. The part of you that never got ground does not lie down and go quiet. It goes looking for somewhere to be visible, finds someone already living it, fastens onto her, and makes you ache. That ache is not envy. Envy wants her to have less. This does not. You would be horrified if her orchard failed. This wants the thing itself. It is your own unlived material, recognizing itself across a market, in someone else's hands. So here is the question I promised you. It is not, what did you give up? You have been asking that for years, and it only makes you sad. The question is, who do you keep watching? The woman you keep watching is not your rival, and she is not evidence of your failure. She is your map. She is standing where your ground is. And once you see that, the story you have been telling about yourself comes apart in your hands. It was not laziness. Laziness does not keep something alive for 25 years. It was not lack of talent. You were remarkable at 19, and nobody unremarkables you. It was not that you chose wrongly. You chose what could be chosen with what you had, under a convention that forbade the rest. The cutting is on the windowsill. It is green. That is not the story of a wasted woman. I want to ask you for one word. Not a plan. Not a promise about the next 12 months. You have made those, and they are not what is missing. One word, left below this video, and the word is ground. That is all. Ground. It means the thing in my jar is going in the earth this year. It means you have stopped calling it dead and started calling it rootless. A different problem entirely, and a solvable one. Leave it, if it is true. Not one of them goes unseen, and your word may be the one that gives the next woman the courage to leave hers. Now I have to be honest with you, because you did not come here to be flattered. Jung did not say this was pleasant. What he said, in Ion, was this. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. Considerable moral effort, not inspiration, not a good week. Here is what that looks like in an ordinary life. Take a cutting out of water and put it in soil, and it wilts. Water roots are not soil roots. The plant has to grow a whole different root system while it looks, to everyone including you, like it is dying. For a while, starting will look exactly like proof that you were right to wait. And there is a harder cost than that. Putting it in the ground means admitting it mattered. 25 years of, oh, that was just a thing I used to do. You have to set that sentence down. You have to say out loud, this was important to me and I did not get to have it, and grieve it properly before you can plant anything. That is the moral effort, not the digging, the admitting. Thea planted hers in the autumn at the bottom of her own terrace, in the worst light on the hill. Badly. And a year later, she finally understood the 5 words the old woman had said at the market. That old woman had looked at her, the best grafter on the hill, who had put every good branch she ever cut onto somebody else's tree, and said, "That jar was never a home. I am not going to promise you an orchard." Thea did not get an orchard. 3 years on, she had one tree in bad light that fruited unevenly. What she had was the end of that ache. She could stand at the market, look at another woman's crates, and feel nothing but the ordinary pleasure of good fruit, because the thing in her chest finally had somewhere to be. It was never dying, seeker. It was only ever waiting for ground. And if you are sitting there thinking, all right, but how? I would not even know how a woman my age begins. I have already made you the whole answer. It is called It's Not Too Late, a gentle system for starting over. It is the longest and most complete video I have ever made. A full season, 6 doors, 1 small practice behind each one. It is where you take a cutting when you have decided to give it ground. I will put it beside me at the end, and the link is in the description below. So tonight, before you decide anything, go and look at your jar, not to plant it, just to admit that you have one and that you have been keeping it alive all this time. Until then, seekers, walk gently, be kind, and remember, you are already enough. The best self you seek is already inside you.